Transition that into the UAS industry. That's one of the industries I believe that's going to bridge the north and, or the east and the west together quite a bit. I remember a couple of years ago I sat in a meeting with the Industrial Commission, and they were having manual planes, people actually still in planes flying over doing some surveillance, and that was a little shocking to me because we're at a place pretty close, if not there now, to where drones and UAS can be doing that for us, and we've got this whole eastern side that has grown significantly over the last 10 years, not just the last 3 years,
right,
but it's been growing for 10 years on this side of the state. And do you see a day where the UAS industry is going to, in fact, I think President Obama signed something in law several years ago that there'll be like 10,000 UASs in the sky by 2020.
mm-hmm.
So we're progressing there. Do you see the day where we'll use UASs out in the Bakken on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
The answer is yes, but let me even take it up a level above that, because the big era that we're moving into is an era of automatically collected data. I just got done talking about, spill reporting. Mm-hmm. And when I say spill reporting, I'm pretty sure everybody has in their mind a clipboard and a piece of paper, a white form that looks like a government tax form, and somebody with a pen, writing it out and mailing it in to somebody. And that's the way people think about data collection. And it turns out that humans are actually not very good at data collection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also very expensive. And if you're taking a petroleum engineer and having them fill out that form, not the highest and best use of their time. In the same way, this has occurred in healthcare with a bunch of federal regulations where we've turned, our highest paid, highest trained people in healthcare, all of our doctors and nurses. And if you have a loved one or yourself that's been in the doctor in the last 5 years, you know what they're doing. They're not looking at you. They got their hands on a keyboard,
mm-hmm.
Because we've turned them all into data entry. And it turns out that, doctors, they didn't go to school for that. They're not good at it. We couldn't read their handwriting when they're writing prescriptions. Turns out they're not good at data entry either. Because we're human. So, one of the companies I'm involved with in healthcare is focusing on automatically collecting data, on the location and status and temperature. Is it sterile? Is it clean? Is it dirty? Is it on? Is it off? Is it in the cabinet or is it left the cabinet? Is the temperature of this fridge on or off? Hundreds of applications in healthcare, and in just in an 8 hospital area for the Veterans Administrator, we're tracking 435 objects, 435,000. I mean, down to scalpels. And the scalpel, can have a 2D etching on it and go through 1,000 watch cycles, and we can still tell when that thing's passing underneath the reader where it is and which scalpel it is and which surgeries it was involved in. So the level of automatic data collection that's available with the computing power and the digital stuff we have today is amazing. Now let's apply that to the Bakken, and then throw UAVs on top of it, which is where I'm going, is because a UAV is just a vehicle for data collection is the way I would think about it. Yes, it can fly. Yes, the battery power is going to get stronger. Yes, the accuracy is going to get higher, but it's like, infrared and cameras and, the visual stuff. And so, there's so many things, but then the kinds of things I'm talking about in healthcare, again, on pipelines, I envision a day where, we're going to have, not just, metering on the flows and pressure gaugers, but you might have something every 10 meters, you might have something, and people say, oh, that's way too expensive. No, the cost of these automatic sensors, are going to be in the pennies when they start getting. We've already got, in agriculture, we got people that are putting, one in every ear of every cow. They're building these things out, in the units, tens of millions of type units. When you're building at that scale, then the cost is pennies. And so if we're talking about pennies, think about the automatic sensors you could have collecting information versus, hiring one more state employee.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we need real people to interpret the data, but we don't need to pay people to do data collection when we can do it automatically. And then you talk about rail safety, you throw this in there. I was at a keynoting at a tech conference, and the CEO of Burlington Northern was at the same conference, and he was describing that they've got this sound array that they put on side of a railroad track, and it's about 20 meters long, both sides, trains going by at 70 miles an hour, and they can detect, if a bearing is, if a wheel's cracked or a bearing is going to go out through the sound that it's making. Okay, well, a rail inspector walking past a parked train can't see that with a human eye, but they can pick it up by the sound it makes. So again, that's, there are dozens of examples of we're entering into a world with the digital era is going to produce all kinds of automatically collected data, and that's going to unleash all kinds of information that we never had before, and that's going to, improve safety, reduce spills, give us more data to make decisions, help us make better, with predictive analytics, on that data we can make better decisions about, what to do next. It changes everything, but this is, it's been talked about as big data.
We're talking big data,
We're
right?
talking big data, but the reason how you get big data is back in that healthcare example, if you got 435,000 objects, all of which are speaking to you automatically every 5 seconds going, here I am, I'm clean, I'm dirty, that's a lot of data that you're generating. That's not, that's humans generate very little data. Humans with clipboards are just super slow and super inefficient. Automatically generated data, it's accurate and it's large, and that gives us an opportunity with the computing power and the storage we have, plus in the cloud. We can do this stuff virtually. It's a whole new world, and it's so I get very excited about it because I think there are going to be so many applications for us to apply in the Bakken when we're talking about big geography with lots of activity across, lots of functions happening. It's the perfect application for it, and we could lead the world in it. Why would North Dakota be the showcase of how to apply all this technology?
And you see this in agriculture as well. Last time I talked to Commissioner Gorian, he was talking about the biodegradable sensors that they put in the ground, and they speak to the UAVs as you come over, and so what's coming down the path is real-time big data. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was at the Drone Focus Conference here in Fargo yesterday, which is it's gonna be the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference in 5 years. My prediction is this drone focus thing. I think we had 350, 400 people. This thing people from NASA, people from all over the country here in Fargo for this conference. But of course, big representation from NDSU and UND because between the aviation background at UND and the agricultural research at NDSU, plus the fact that people like Senator Hoeven, who've been out in front of this thing, advocating, getting the airspace approved from the FAA. We can do things here, in this Northern Plains airspace, and what's going on in Grand Sky, in the conjunction between the Air Force Base in Grand Forks and Northrop Grumman, McDonnell Douglas. These guys are building big buildings up there. We've got the right kind of players coming in for us to actually build a huge industry in North Dakota.
These are the biggest players in the game.
Absolutely biggest. And we're not talking about little 4 rotor blade things that carry your GoPro camera up for 20 minutes. They've got things up there they're flying that have got 40-foot wingspans. But when you do that, well, then all of a sudden now you can be mapping entire sections of agricultural fields with infrared reflective light, all kinds of things, and we're going to have so much data around agriculture that we've never had before. But it's a huge advantage. It's a huge advantage for both the universities and the state of North Dakota that's happening here, because it's also going to help us attract talent. Students from around the country that are interested in this are going to want to come to school here because of because of what we've got going on. I met a young guy yesterday. He's got 4,500 hours of flight time on drones. Okay,
That's quite a bit.
It's a lot, and he's a very young person. Think of what this person and I was just going, where is this guy going in his life? I want almost like, let me follow you around and invest in your next company. It's exciting to see where we're going.
I call NDSU the brains and UND the body, because they're kind of building the bodies up there. But a lot of people don't understand that North Dakota State is on the forefront of building the opticals and the algorithms they call them.
Yep.
Explain to me that the brains behind these things being developed at NDSU.
Well, in any one of these, projects, it's maybe too simplistic, but to call it the hardware and the software. You have to have the physical aeronautics ability to get something that flies efficiently. And again, one of the big challenges is the the propulsion, the battery life. Because the heavier your drone, the more juice you have to use to keep the thing up and airborne, and then the less juice you've got to be able to do your data collection, or your flight times are shorter. And so again, it's creating efficient flight so that your payload can be focused on actually doing the data collection. And the data collection again there are big advances being made, because as we know, if anybody's got a cell phone, knows how much better their cameras now than it was 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. So the advances in, lightweight mobile optics, the advances in what's going on with infrared, refractive light, I mean, all of these things, and again, in some cases, we're collecting those images, but we haven't developed the software programs to manage all the data that's coming in. How do we compare, if you take a picture, the same picture of the field once a week over a period of 4 weeks, how do we develop the software that compares the variances between those two? 2 and 3, week 2, week 3, week 4, what's happening, what are the changes? And then creating databases, that information, so that when you go back the next year and the next year, you can compare. On this date, we flew over it, it looked like this. The same time a year later, weather conditions were different. So we'll build up databases of information around what we're observing, and then over the time series, we'll get smarter as well.